Well, I guess if I'm stepping out here first as Hedy Boyce, I just want to say, wow, I feel guilty that I have bar stools here and you can't sit on them, but you know. But anyway, I've come to you from Florida. I've lived here for 8 years. And I think this is an absolutely amazing, wonderful community that we have. And I was going to make buzzing sounds. I was going through the audience, and I think that it's remarkable at what we have sitting out here in this audience. I mean, I think they should come up and tell their stories. Got some amazing ones. But I'm going to turn off that little switch right now, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. Instead of standing up here and just talking about Dr. Susan Anderson, I think what I would like to do is do a little bit of a theatrical history for you. Because I think that maybe by sometimes just acting just a little bit kind of makes you really feel what this woman went through in her life. Now, I may not be able to show all of it, but I'm going to do the best that I can. And as I said, I am Dr. Susan Anderson. And I thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to come and listen to my adventures. Because my life was an adventure. Why, at 73 years old, newspapers and magazines back east were writing stories about this mountain woman doctor up there in the Colorado Rockies. Well, it caught the attention of a very, very famous movie star of her day, Ethel Barrymore. We all know who Ethel Barrymore is, right? She's the great-great-grandmother of Drew Barrymore. That was pretty good. Well, I had a whole town that was relying on me to take care of them at 73 years old, I said. Now, I didn't have time to stop my doctoring and write memoirs for Hollywood, so I turned them down. But you know Hollywood, they just seem like they never give up. You know, they waited until I was dead and gone. Yeah, and then they did do a TV series based on my life story. And because I never gave them permission to use my name, they called it Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And, well, yeah, I guess this is my life's adventures. Well, give or take a lie or two. Now, before I take you back 145 years to begin my 90-year adventure, I want to point out a few things to you. I did take a little bit of time to make up these little signs over here. That's just in case somebody out there needs to take a break, maybe check your eyelids for holes, I don't care. But anyhow, you're always going to know where you are because I'm going to be walking from sign to sign. Second thing I'd like to point out to you is my doctor's bag. In my doctor's bag, I always carried two very unusual items. First was my Colt 45. Hey man, this is the Wild West we're talking about here. And sometimes that was a little bit of a companion to have around, you know, just in case there were some wild animals out there or wilder men. I don't know. And the second thing was my little dog named Pooch. I don't know if you know that or not, but Pooch was just my best friend. And I used to talk to Pooch all the time. He just loved to travel around with me in that doctor's bag. And in a way, kind of, Pooch was my little early warning system too. I guess when those wild animals or those wild men started to approach, you let me know. And another thing too, that bag attracted all these cowboys around here that used to think that Doc Susie would have whiskey in there. Well, she didn't believe in that. But in the event, somebody decided they were going to stick their hand down in my bag, they were going to come in for one big surprise because Pooch was going to bite them. Now let's go back to the beginning. According to our family Bible, I was born January 31st, 1870, in Nevada Mills, Indiana. Now, 2 years after that, my beloved brother John was born. And my earliest childhood memory goes back to the time that Pa and John and I were in this railroad station in Nevada Mills. And I can remember John and I just pressed our little faces up against that train window as that train just kind of pulled away from the station, leaving my mom behind weeping. I just felt like I was on that train for like days. But when that train finally came to a stop, well, we were in Wichita, Kansas, our new home. But to tell you the truth, I guess I never ever will understand why parents would get a divorce. Maybe little kids never understand things like that. We moved into this great big farmhouse. And soon the entire Anderson family joined us. Now, I especially loved it when my grandma was there, because my grandmother kind of took the place of me not having my mom around. And my grandmother taught me a lot of wonderful things. She taught me how to read the Bible. She taught me how to knit. She taught me how to crochet. And later in life, that really, really came in very, very handy. And my pa, he was just an absolute credible barnyard veterinarian. He used to take care of all of our farm animals. And I used to tag along with Pa. And I learned a lot about doctoring animals by tagging along with him. But the truth be known, it was always my Pa's dream to become a medical doctor. And it really wasn't ours. But Pa had always worked so hard, and he never really had time to make his dream come true. So I guess he felt that maybe one day, one of us would grow up and be a doctor for him. Well, my Pa soon gave up on John. Why, that boy was just cutting up all the time, never paying attention to anything. John loved to get out there and play cowboys and lasso our cows, and he just loved to play bullfighter. He loved to play that bullfighter. Those cows did not like John very much. Now, another thing Pa taught me, which I guess if you're going to have a gun, it's a good thing to learn how to shoot one. And I did have a rattlesnake around here somewhere. I don't know what to do with him. Hold on a minute. I got one. I got to target practice on all those rattlesnakes. Now, up in Kansas, those darn snakes were all over Kansas. But buddy, let me tell you, they weren't on our farm because I shot them all. Now, moving right along, I'm now graduated from the 8th grade. And back in those days, if you were in possession of an 8th grade diploma, well, that was considered learning enough. Turn right around and to teach middle school. Well, I did just that for 2 long years. And that's because Pa wanted me to stay behind until John caught up because he felt he really needed a little bit more looking after. Well, when all this, a little bit later on, John and I got together and we went to Wichita High School and we graduated together. Now, while we were away in high school, my pa met this woman named Minnie, and he married her. Now, Minnie was about, I don't know, she was probably closer to my age as she was in my pa's age. And then to tell you the truth, I think that woman was a little bit jealous of us. Well, maybe the truth be known, I was jealous of her. Because all of my life, I was pa's little girl. And she gonna take my pa away from me. Well, about the same time all of this was going on, the Wichita Eagle newspaper was full of stories about the richest gold strike in history happening right up there in that little town of Cripple Creek, Colorado. Now my pa, he was so fascinated by all of these stories that he kept hearing about. He just up and sold the farm, moved the entire Anderson family right on out here to Cripple Creek. Now our family arrived out here. It was late in 1892. Now I am 22 years old. And Pa, he was always so proud of the fact that our family was amongst the first 100 settlers in these parts. Oh, but not for long. Why, the excitement of this gold rush started to attract all sorts of get-rich-quick scoundrels and those Myers Avenue hoochie mamas, to Cripple Creek. Well, before long, the men even started to outnumber the women by about 10 to 1. And they weren't exactly, I guess, the kind of men that Pa wanted around me. So he decided it's time to pack me up and send me off to Ann Arbor, Michigan to study medicine. Well, folks, I got my degree and I returned to Cripple Creek. But as I had suspected, I was in the early stages of tuberculosis. But I worked too hard to get my degree. I wasn't going to let a little thing like TB get me down. So I set up my medical practice on Bennett Avenue in Cripple Creek, and I went to work. And it took a long time. But the folks in that town were finally starting to accept me as a woman doctor. And then a wonderful thing happened. And then this wonderful thing happened. I met W.R. Now, W.R. was the man of my dreams. He asked me to marry him. And I said yes. Now, life just couldn't get any better than this. And then something happened. It was between W.R. and my pa. And without warning, I was left standing at the altar while W.R. skedaddled out of this town just about as fast as that horse could carry him, never to be seen or heard from again. What in the world did my pa say to him? What was so damning that just made him just leave me humiliated like that? Could it have been that he said I was a half-breed? Was he still mad at me because I tried to find my mother in college? Oh, God, I'm never going to ever know that answer. Now, my heart is just broken. And months passed. And I'm just not paying attention to the fact that my beloved brother John took ill. And if life just could not have been any crueler, his illness turned into pneumonia. And Paul Minnie didn't want to bother me. So they didn't call me until it was too late. And by the time I got there, all I could do was watch my brother die. I was a doctor and I could do nothing to help my brother. John had been my best friend on this earth. And now my best friend in heaven. After John's death, Pa and the rest of the family just moved on out to California. And they have buried my beloved brother right here in Cripple Creek at the Mount Pisgah Cemetery. And I knew someday I would be beside him again. Well, heck, I didn't have any reason to stay here either. So I too moved on. I set up my medical practice in Denver, Colorado. And I hung out my shingle, and I waited for patients to show up at my door. But they were few, and they were far between. I soon ran out of money. So I ended up having to take a job as a nurse in Greeley, Colorado. But as the years passed, my tuberculosis worsened. As a matter of fact, I was dying. I was done in. And I remembered that I had read a verse in the Bible that said, "Physician, heal thyself." So I decided I'm going to move up to Fraser, Colorado. You know, that is the coldest darn place I've ever been to in my entire life. Woo! I'm not kidding you. Woo! They are to rename it Fraser, Colorado. Woo! But I thought that, maybe up there, maybe that cold, thin, dry mountain air would either cure me or kill me. Woo! Well, guess what, folks? Cure me it did. And as my strength improved, I found myself less and less brooding about the past. So I decided to go to work at the country store in Fraser. Well, I was feeling better and I needed the money, but I still have not told anyone that I'm a doctor. But you know how folks like to gossip? Well, one morning, I'm going to get those all, aren't I? One morning, I was out sweeping the floor. on that great big porch up there, I looked up and I saw this young cowboy. He came running across the street. He was all covered in blood and yelling something about somebody named Davy was all tangled up in barbed wire and hurt really bad. You know, somebody had told that young whippersnapper that I was a doctor. That's why he came running to fetch me. Fiddlesticks. Now everybody in this town's going to know that I'm a doctor. Then I looked up and I saw that boy's all covered in blood. And I remembered my Hippocratic oath. And something just snapped inside of my head. And I instantly transformed from being a clerk in a country store to being the doctor that I was trained to be. So I ran home. Oh boy, I'm going to be a doctor again. And I grabbed my bag. My little dog. This is the funny part. We got to keep going. And what else? And my 45. Now, I ran back to that boy and I said, "Son," I said, "tell me, where's your friend Davy?" And he says, "Well, ma'am, he's down at the corral." I said, "Corral? Can we move him?" And he said, "No, ma'am, we can't. He's hurt too bad." So now hours passed. As I stitched up Davy's multiple wounds, news had spread all over that town that there was this woman doctor working on Davy. And before long, I had a whole circle of people around watching to see what I was doing. And that cowboy just kept pleading with me. "Please, Doc, save him. He's all I've got." But every time I would stitch up Davy's multiple wounds near his mouth, he just reached down and rip them out with his teeth. All right, you figured it out yet? That's right, folks. My first patient up in Fraser was a horse. But actually, I owe Davy a lot. Because when I first went to Fraser, on my deathbed with tuberculosis and a broken heart to boot, my work on this horse showed folks that I was a real doctor. Because you know, back then, doctors were expected to take care of farm animals and pets as well as people. And in Fraser, with my health restored for nearly 40 years, I ventured out into all kinds of weather, on horseback, on horseshoes, and even on foot. Why, all told, I think I treated thousands of lumberjacks, ranchers, railroad workers, miners, and their families. Heck, in Fraser, they were so desperate to have a doctor that they overlooked the fact that I was a woman. And later, they even bragged about it. Up there in those mountains, we treated a horrible influenza epidemic of 1918. I was even sworn in as the coroner of Grand County. And at 81 years old, I was the only doctor that Fraser had. 81, think about it, I'm still being a doctor. Now at 86 years old, I had to leave my beloved Fraser. And I spent the remaining years of my life in a nursing home in Denver, Colorado. Now, when I went there, I had no money. I couldn't afford to pay for this nursing home. And I get choked up on this every time I say it myself, too, because I needed doctor's care. Heck, they even had to amputate one of my toes from frostbite. And yet, not too sure, but I think it was those beloved people up there in Fraser who footed all those bills for me. And God bless them. And I finally died there at the ripe old age of 90. Now, how's that for a tuberculosis survivor? Now, when they brought my body back to Cripple Creek, this is my last wish. I want to be buried beside my beloved brother John. Well, due to poor record keeping and the length of time that it had been since I lost my brother John, they could not locate John's grave. So they just simply buried me out there in the front all by myself. Now, years later, they did discover John's grave. But they still left me out there all by myself, which made me the only person that is up there in that Mount Pisgah Cemetery that has their name on 2 headstones. Now, folks, all I have to say is that my life was one heck of an uphill battle. But honestly, I mean, don't you think that ending kind of puts a little bit of a twist in your knickers? Well, what'd you think? Okay? I just hope that I know that with everyone sitting out there, the feeling that I have for this woman and her accomplishments are just, I just can't explain it. I guess every time that I have the opportunity to share this with someone, it really makes me feel absolutely wonderful, because I think the recognition for this woman is long overdue.
Yes, absolutely. So it was Hollywood that made it Colorado Springs, because she never was there, right?
Susie.
Doc Susie was in Colorado Springs. Now, she did go down there, and I've heard a few, little comments about it. Yes, she went down there and treated patients down in Colorado Springs.
Oh, she did?
She did.
Because I thought maybe she never made it there.
No, she did. She made it to, she was a busy little girl. She was kind of all over the place.
Okay.
But she never married, huh?
She did not. She never married because, I don't know, I guess her father was wonderful, but he always, people don't quite understand that back in those days, you did what your dad said to do. You know, and you obeyed your parents, and your father felt as if he did not want her to get married, I don't think. She never did find out. Never did find out what Dad said that time.
And that kind of broke up that relationship between her and her father. She never did find it out. She dated a few guys, and she did have a few problems. I'm finding out that one might be married or something like that. She just didn't have good luck with men. She didn't get married.
The book that you had, Doc Susie by Cornell, is that in this library?
I don't know if I can answer that one if they have it. Do you have it?
It probably is, but if not, they
We
can
have it
order it
at the
for you. We normally carry it at the museum, but we got sold out.
The district museum in Cripple Creek usually carries it, but here lately I'm finding out that it is getting harder and harder to get, but you can get it online with Amazon, I do know that.
The UPass Historical Society in Woodland Park, right in back of the library,
Yes.
carries the books.
They do carry it? Okay, did everybody hear that?
The Lake George Library has a copy too.
Lake George Library also has a copy of it. That's good.
Were you aware of other female physicians at the same time as yourself?
Myself personally, they weren't up here in the Rockies, but there were a few of them. When I went to college, they were just beginning to start a little bit.
So are you familiar at all, either in character or out of character, with, I think it's Dr. Suzette LaFlèche Picat, or Picat LaFlèche, who was an American Indian, Omaha, Ponca, Winnebago. Are you familiar with her?
I am not, but I think I would
I'll
like
see
to
if
be.
I can find the book for you.
I would like to be.
Obviously, Poochie didn't live to be 90. Was there other Poochies? Was there always a puppy with her?
Now, I want to tell you what I did with Pooch, and I did this, and I'm not kidding, I did this. I used to talk to Pooch all the time, okay? And I love that dog so much. When he died, I had him stuffed. I did. And I still carried him around in my doctor's bag because if I felt like I wanted somebody to talk to, he'd listen.
So I didn't need a husband.
Any other questions?
I saw the 8th grade test from the late 1890s, because our grandmother graduated from up at Decker's at Shady Brook, 8th grade, and her sisters and brothers, and it was put out by Castle Rock, and I have a copy of that. I could not even understand the questions.
You know, I would like to have that. I would
Oh,
like to
got
have,
it.
was it difficult? I mean, was it
Oh,
difficult?
no, I can give
Or
it to you.
Was it difficult, the questions, I mean, were they
Oh,
hard?
I couldn't even understand what they wanted. And it gave you like 5 hours to do this test. I couldn't have done it in 5 months.
Well, that makes me feel good.
And 8th grade education was more than college, it looked like to me, or at least more than high school.
Wow,
Yeah, I've got it, yeah.
that's an interesting point. I would like to have a copy of that.
Yeah, and I
That's
had her
very interesting.
report cards, and she got A's and B's, and, you know, I didn't know my grandmother was that brilliant, but.
Any other questions? I want to, well, a minute.
So did you save Davy?
Did I save Davy? I did save Davy, because my work on Davy showed everybody what a great doctor I was, right? So I had to save him. If he wouldn't have been alive, I don't think that would have showed anything.
What about the cowboy? Did you work on him?
I didn't work on him, but I cleaned him up.
Did your knitting and crocheting come in handy?
It came in really handy. When I was pulling that barbed wire off that horse and having to sew him up, I was really, really happy that my grandma had taught me that, really. Any other questions? Does anybody want to ask any questions about myself as Hedy?
Yeah, you're from Florida,
I am from Florida.
and why are you here now, or are you living here now, or?
That man right there, that's why I'm here. I live in Florida. When I met my husband, I must say that we both had been on our second marriage, met each other. And he had bought, when he was stationed here, my husband had been in the service for 25 years, and he was stationed out at Fort Carson. And when he was at Fort Carson, he fell in love with Colorado, and he was going to be sent to Germany, and he decided he wanted to take a piece of history, take a part of the United States with him. When I met him, he and I got together, and he'd take me out here for visits to see, and I fell in love with Colorado and his dream as well. It took him almost 20 years, but we built our home. We live in Ranch Resorts in Florida, and I love it here. It's a fabulous place. And one of the things I was saying myself about feelings with Doc Susie, how I feel maybe this had a connection for me. I really don't know. But when I was the first legal mother of the entire airline industry. Now, at that time, this is going back to 1970, and you could not be a flight attendant and continue to go to work. I was a flight attendant supervisor, as a matter of fact, at the time, and they just kind of said, you know, you're out, but don't tell anybody you're pregnant, and let's kind of hide. And I didn't kind of like the way things were being handled. And so I decided to fight it. The Catholic Church, Women's Lib, front pages of newspapers, it just went viral, you might say. And it was just one of those things that we won that, and I feel a connection in a sense to Doc Susie because of being a female to be able to fight for some of your rights, because we at that time, you know, Doc Susie couldn't even vote. And it was really a great recognition that you could feel like you actually fought for and paved the way for other people. Made me feel really very proud of that.
Did you play in the program of the Mount Pisgah Cemetery Tour?
I certainly did. I've been doing Doc Susie at the Mount Pisgah Cemetery now for 4 years. And I just, like I said, I just really love to portray her character. And I just feel very, very honored. And another thing, the Cripple Creek has told me that they decided one year we all went up to film apps for Cripple Creek. And they elected not to use Doc Susie because they didn't think she was important enough. Well. Well, you said that to the wrong person. And I have been kind of, you know, fighting them, and my comment was, okay, folks, you want Cripple Creek to be known a lot, I mean, not saying anything, and she'd come and knock me over the head. She's a very good friend of mine, too. Pearl DeVere. I said, would you prefer Cripple Creek to be known as prostitutes or a very accomplished woman? So we are now filming the app after Christmas, and it will be available soon. So I think I'm very proud to get that done and to help people to understand Doc Susie a little bit better. I know there were a lot of things that I did not say about her, but her life was just so, I mean, every time you'd turn around, this poor woman was reaching into a bag and having to pull out another trick. You know, she had so many obstacles in her life, and it was so sad that it just really and truly just makes me feel like I can't do her justice in 30 minutes, but I just think she was just an amazing person.
What was it like for her to go to medical school?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. That's a good question, because I'm glad you asked that. When Doc Susie went to medical school, and her father, I don't know if a lot of you knew this or not, but her dad was a very wealthy person in the beginning. And of course now, the jealousy between Minnie. And when he married Minnie, just before they got to Cripple Creek, Minnie gave him like 3 children anyway, but you know, she was trying to make sure that she had control of the money, which was probably the right thing to do, I don't know. But anyway, when Doc Susie was sent off to Ann Arbor, Michigan to go to college, her father paid the bill. Well, you think student loans are new? No, sir. Doc Susie had the first one, too. Because when she was there, her father cut her off finances. Along with everything else that she had to do, she unfortunately knew somebody that was a really good friend of hers in college that lent her the money. And Doc Susie did pay that money back to these people. But if it had not been for that, she would never have gotten her degree and continued on. So for the last, I think, year and a half she was in college, she had to get somebody else to pay for it because Dad cut her off. Didn't have that money anymore. And also, when she was there, that is when she says she comes back with tuberculosis. Well, what happened, Doc Susie had been working on all of the poor people. And that's how you get, and nobody was paying to be treated. And people were very, very sick. Somewhere around in that area is where Doc Susie contracted tuberculosis. So going to school was a pretty tough thing for her. Any other questions? That beautiful Bronco hat there. Go Broncos! Woo! All right.
You mentioned just briefly that she tried to find her mother, did she?
She did find her mother. She did find her mother. She wasn't too happy with the outcome, but she did find her mother. She did.
What was the outcome?
I'm going to say this like Doc Susie would say it when she doesn't want to say anything. Fiddlesticks. Yeah, it wasn't good. She wasn't happy, you know, when she met her mother. It was kind of sad because there were other children involved, and that's another story.
Do you know why the parents got divorced?
Well, rumors have it, and there's lots of rumors floating around those days. Rumors had it that possibly her mother, you know, you have to understand in those days, it's not anything like what kind of world we live in today. They were very prejudiced. Very. Rumors had it that apparently her mother was a half-breed.
Oh.
And if that was the case, and that's what she thinks that her pa might have whispered in WR's ear too, the answer is not really known because Susie was a very private individual. And to get her to come out and talk about things was, you know, she didn't want to talk about it, she didn't. But I don't know, I just lost it right there. Okay, so what was I saying? I lost my
About
My
the
brain.
reason they got divorced.
Going-
I wonder
yeah.
does that address that in the book?
It does.
Half-breed, so it's Indian?
It talks about this half-breed in different instances. It doesn't really say about the divorce that they got from Susie's parents. It doesn't really talk about that. But there's so many things that have gotten lost. There's so many things in her life that you just kind of have to fill in the blanks a little bit and use your imagination with it. But truly, it could have been the reason because it just never said anything. I mean, just they were divorced and Dad pulls up, takes off on the train and move the whole family, we're gone. So, I don't know, it could have been that, and when he found that out, that might have been the reason why Pa was so concerned about Doc Susie maybe giving a half-breed child to somebody. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, it's everybody's imagination and fill in those blanks. We've got that Bronco fan back there again.
You say he moved the whole family. Now, that was only your brother and you, is that correct? Or was
No, he
there-
moved his grandma, everybody. Oh, yeah. They all went to Cripple Creek. Yeah. Every time that my pa, Susan's pa, would decide he was going to move, he couldn't just move one person. He had to move the whole family, every place he went. But that was his side of the family, not the mother's side.
So it could have been grandma and brothers and sisters or whoever.
Exactly. Exactly. So Grandma used to tell, and one of the books tells that story, that Grandma did talk about possibly this Susan could be a half-breed. Grandma does that. It is mentioned in the book. It is mentioned in the book.
Did you reunite with your father at all?
No. Pa went to California, and it was just, no. The one thing I did do, though, is because, I don't know why, I guess I always thought about Indiana. And I guess you'll notice this beautiful home that was built. As a matter of fact, it still stands in Fraser, and somebody's living in it. And Doc Susie wanted to go back to Indiana so bad. She actually packed up from Fraser at one time and left Fraser, got on the train. But when she got back there, it was too expensive. And, you know, it's hard in life to turn around and go back. And she couldn't afford to do it. She didn't even get off the train. Turned right back around and went back to Fraser and stayed there. And that's one of the reasons why she has that house. Because she always talked about the roof line. It looks like a barn. And if any of you have ever seen that picture, well, I don't have that picture. But if any of you have ever seen that picture, that great big beautiful house that she actually helped build herself. It's really incredible. She was an amazing woman.
Sure makes our life seem less complicated, doesn't it?
Here, here. It certainly does. It certainly does. Is there any other questions? Nobody else wants that.
Doc, I
Can I give you my email? Sure.